week 12 of the fantasy football season. He's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking this week. Number one, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson, he's led this Raven team back into the playoff hunt. They've won 4 in a row. This week, a great matchup versus the New York Jets, a defense that can't stop anyone. And Mark Andrews, he's been getting things going over the last couple of weeks. And Zay Flowers, I know he hasn't found the end zone, but he's been a consistent wide receiver this season. And also his rushing ability obviously makes Lamar, with this great matchup and all those factors, my number one option this week. Number two, Drake May of the New England Patriots. Drake May, he seems like a 10-year vet already, only in his second year in the NFL. And this week, a great matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals, a defense that can't stop anyone. He's spreading that football out to Stephon Diggs, Hunter Henry, Matt Collins, possibly Kayshon Boutte returning to the lineup this week. So I think Drake May once again goes out there and he gets his usual 25, 28 fantasy points. Number three, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, a monster game last week, 50 fantasy points, scored 6 touchdowns in that ball game in the victory versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this week, a tougher matchup at Houston, one of the better defenses in the league. It is, though, a Thursday night football game where they're usually high-scoring games more times than not. And the only thing Josh Allen's obviously missing in this offense is a true number one wide receiver. But this week at Houston, even in the tougher matchup, I still think he goes out there and he's a top 3 option. Number 4, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So maybe I'm higher on Hurts than consensus this week. I like the matchup with the Dallas Cowboys. I know this defense definitely improved a little bit over the last few weeks, adding some pieces. Quinnen Williams, Logan Wilson, Overshown, and Malik Hooker coming off IR. But I still think Jalen Hurts is going to go out there. This is an indoor game where they don't got to deal with the elements as well like they did a few weeks ago in Green Bay. And then last week he was well back home in Philadelphia. So with those factors, and I think he's going to force feed A.J. Brown in this one like he tried last week. And this time they'll connect more. He's a top 4 option. Number 5, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs, 5-5 on the season. This is a big game versus one of the better AFC teams in the league, in the Indianapolis Colts coming to town. And Arrowhead, usually they put up a lot of points, and they've been beating teams for seasons in a row now in November and December, where Kansas City at home is pretty much unbeatable in these late weeks of the season. So this week, Indianapolis coming in, Mahomes in this offense coming off a bad loss in a tough one at Denver. With their backs against the wall now, I think he goes out there. And when you got Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, Xavier Worthy, he has a good game. Number 6, Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. So Matthew Stafford had an MVP caliber season this season. And obviously when you got 2 stud receivers like Puka Nacua with Davante Adams, it makes everything easier. So this week, with Tampa Bay coming into town, they give up tons of points. And like I said, with those 2 guys operating at a high level at the receiver position, I think Stafford goes out there once again. And after a mediocre game last week, goes out there and breaks out with another big game. Number 7, Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. So last week they couldn't do anything with this Lion offense. Goff, he had 14 fantasy points he salvaged with a touchdown to Jameson Williams. And I just thought a lot of passes were batted down in that game on Goff. And he was under pressure constantly in that one versus Philadelphia, one of the better defenses in the league. But this week, back home indoors, don't have to deal with the elements. And also it's a great matchup versus one of the worst defenses in the league in New York. So I think Goff bounces back in a big way. Number 8, Jacoby Brissett of the Arizona Cardinals. So maybe I'm way higher in Brissett than consensus. But ever since he stepped into the starting lineup, he's had 20 or more fantasy points weekly as Brissett, and amongst the league leaders in passing yards in that time as well. So Kyler Murray, we know he's on IR. To me, I think he's done in Arizona after this season, and we won't see him again on the field. It's Kyler Murray. And Brissett, he's a grizzled veteran. He's going to spread that football out. And like I said, there's a lot of garbage time, and we've seen it the last couple of weeks where he's putting up numbers. Like last week, he went out there 462 yards, 2 touchdowns in that one. So this week with Jacksonville coming in, another home game for Arizona. I think Brissett, once again, garbage time or not, he's going to throw the football a lot. Number 9, Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. Purdy finally returned from a toe injury in last week's game, and he lit it up, even though I know it was at the Arizona Cardinals, not a good defense at all. But him and George Kittle back to where they left off over the last couple seasons. He had 2 touchdowns in that game. Got McCaffrey in the backfield. Jawan Jennings, he's having a solid season. And this week, a Monday night with Carolina coming in where they're not a great defense. I like Purdy as a top 10 option. Number 10, Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So his numbers, they've been solid once again this season as Baker, but I feel like they're falling off a little bit And obviously that's expected when Mike Evans, he's been out pretty much a majority of the season, and he's going to miss the remainder of the regular season with the collarbone injury. Chris Godwin, he hasn't been right. He's only appeared in a few games. He might return this week as well. But like I said, Baker Mayfield, it doesn't matter the players out there. He still goes out there, he doesn't make excuses, and is a gamer. So this week at the Rams, one of his former teams, I think Baker and this offense, they'll put points on the board again like they did last week. But we'll see if he can have a bigger fantasy game than he did last, where Sean Tucker did have 3 touchdowns and 2 of them on the ground. Last week, number 11, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So Dak Prescott having a good season. Last week went out there and put up a big game at a bad Las Vegas Raider defense. 4 touchdowns, 250 yards in that one. And this week, Philadelphia coming in, one of the better units in the league. And also, the last couple weeks, Philadelphia is keeping teams out of the end zone. Held Green Bay down in that ball game, winning 10-6. Last week, held down Jared Goff in that offense, winning 16-9 in that game. But this week, indoor ball game, Dak Prescott, he's had a pretty decent track record throughout his career versus Philadelphia. And I think there is a possibility this could be a high-scoring game, believe it or not. But if it's not, still Dak Prescott, he finds ways to get points on the board. More weeks than not, number 12, Jackson Dart of the New York Giants. So we'll see if Dart returns from the concussion. Last week, I thought he looked decent on the sidelines. Not like he had a lot of ill effects from the concussion or anything like that, is Dart. So this week, it's a tough matchup going into Detroit. Their top 10 defense in a lot of statistics this season is Detroit's defense. And also as well, there's not much in this offense right now. Wendell Robinson, Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins are your receivers, and that's if Darius Slayton even returns. In the backfield, the Tracy and Singletary, I guess, is a decent 50-50 split. And you got Theo Johnson at the tight end position. But like I said, Jackson Dart, he's been a good fantasy option all season long since he's been in the starting lineup. 20 or more fantasy points weekly, besides one game at Green Bay in Week 8 was Jackson Dart's numbers this season. And this week, it's going to be a game they're trailing early and often if he returns from concussion. And like I said, with his rushing ability, every week he's in that top 10, 12 discussion. Worst case, 13, Joe Flacco of the Cincinnati Bengals. So it looks like Flacco and this Bengal team will most likely be out Jamar Chase in this game, where he's appealing the 1-game suspension, but we don't know if he's going to win it. So this week a matchup, New England coming in. New England, one of the better teams in the league. They're on fire, winning 8 games in a row, 9-2 on the season. But they're still vulnerable to giving up some points. And Joe Flacco, we know he's got the gunslinger mentality. We know he stretches the field. And even with Jamar Chase down, you still got T. Higgins in this offense. You got Chase Brown out of the backfield. Izo Vaz, I think, is a decent number 2 wide receiver if they need him to step in a week. And Noah Fant could even go out there and make plays if you need him to. And also, if they're trailing early and often, there could be some garbage time this game as well. 14, Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. So Williams, his numbers to begin the year will way up there amongst the league leaders in fantasy points. In the last month of the season, his numbers have definitely dropped off for Caleb Williams. And this week, a tough matchup, Pittsburgh coming in. Also, as well, we know Soldier Field in November, it's going to be bad. It's going to be freezing temperatures there, most likely. The wind's going to be heavy as well. And obviously, that doesn't bode well for a quarterback. So with all those factors, and Williams not playing great football over the last month of the season, I think it's going to be a long day for him, and he don't have much upside. 15, Sam Darnold of the Seattle Seahawks. So Darnold last week, 4 turnovers in that ball game for Sam Darnold at the Los Angeles Rams, and they still had a chance to win it on a game-winning field goal was this Seattle Seahawks team. So this week, I think he cleans it up a little. Decent matchup at the Tennessee Titans, even though this defense, more weeks than not, they do go out there and compete, and they make you earn scoring points, is this Tennessee defense. But Sam Darnold, him and JSN have been locked in all season. A.J. Bonner, once again, last week, a big game, 10 catches, 70 yards in that one. And I think Sam Darnold, after a bad game last week, he bounces back and has a better one. And also as well, he is a quarterback with a gunslinger mentality, and sometimes you're going to see those games with 3 or 4 picks. 16, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. So Jordan Love last week, he had an easy matchup, but still just got over 20 fantasy points with Jordan Love. And I think this is a run-first team. Even Josh Jacobs, if he's most likely out in this game, Emmanuel Wilson's going to get a decent workload in this game. And also with Tucker Kraft tearing that ACL a few weeks ago, it's been a big hit on this offense and Jordan Love's obviously fantasy value. So this week in Green Bay, this game it's going to be freezing out there. Jaden Reed possibly could return to the lineup, could help this Green Bay Packer team, but this season we just haven't seen much out of Love besides a couple good games for Cincinnati And obviously the Dallas Cowboys game 17, Daniel Jones of the Indianapolis Colts. So the last couple weeks, the numbers are dropping off slowly for Daniel Jones. Obviously with Jonathan Taylor running wild all season long, the numbers at times aren't going to be there for Daniel Jones. But this week, a tough matchup at Kansas City. We know this Indianapolis Colts team's an indoor team, so to go to Arrowhead in November where it's a tough place to play and it's bad weather and loud over there, I just don't see the ceiling being that high for Daniel Jones in this one. I know he's had a great season, but like I said, sometimes it's one of those matchups you just know or think he's not going to go out there and put up fantasy points. With a low ceiling, 18, Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So this week, a good matchup on paper, indoor game in Arizona, which obviously bodes well for a warm weather team like the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. And last week, they had a great blowout victory versus the Los Angeles Chargers, 35-6. So we'll see if they could bring that momentum into this game in Arizona. Jacksonville is one of those odd teams that every week it just seems like a different team's going out there and playing. One big week, one bad week type of deal it's been with Jacksonville this season. But this week at Arizona, I think Lawrence, he could go out there and be a serviceable option in 2 quarterback leagues. 19 Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. So this week, not a great matchup at San Francisco. I know they're down Bosa and Fred Warner for the season is this 49er team. And last week he went out there with a monster game. Him and Ted McMillan put up huge numbers in that one at the Atlanta Falcons. But like I said, Monday Night Football, Carolina usually never on prime time in a big spotlight type of game. And we'll see if Bryce Young could go out there and have a good game. Last week he left a little bit with the ankle, but returned and finished it off to help lead the victory for the Panthers. But like I said, this week in a tougher matchup, not 100% and on prime time, I have him as a back-end option in the 20th and final quarterback. I'm ranking this week's Tyler Shough of the New Orleans Saints. So Shough, he's actually hung in the pocket and he's made some plays for this New Orleans Saints team. Chris Olave's having a good season. He's relying on him so far the few games he started. Juwan Johnson as well, tight end, always the best friend, obviously, of a young quarterback. So this week, they're versus the Atlanta Falcons coming in. We know this defense, they got torched last week by Bryce Young and this Carolina Panther offense. And I think Tyler Shough in deeper leagues could be an okay option. Like I said, with at least got some pieces on this offense that could go out there and make plays versus a mediocre defense. That's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking for Week 12 of the fantasy football season.